Dr. Elara Vance found the research note on her desk in her own handwriting, detailing a temporal anomaly that would occur in precisely 47 seconds. The problem: the note was dated 1 year from today. Her breath hitched, a cold knot tightening in her stomach. The precise looping script was undeniably hers, but the paper was wrong, too crisp, smelling faintly of ozone and something metallic like a storm on old copper. The heading read Echo Year, Primary Convergence Event, Lab Alpha. And the countdown, now 42 seconds, was scribbled in the margin as a frantic afterthought. Elara was a historian, a woman who built her life on verifiable facts, on the solid, dusty bedrock of the past. This was not a fact. This was an impossibility that mocked the very order she dedicated her life to understanding. The central mystery, a question that would soon tear her world apart, whispered from the page. Was this a catastrophe to be prevented, or a new, terrifying state of reality she had to survive? The stakes in that moment were purely personal, a violation of her own mind, but the chill creeping up her spine told her it was about to become so much more. 30 seconds, she shoved back from her desk, the chair wheels screeching on the linoleum. Her lab, usually a sanctuary of ordered chaos, stacked journals, a 14th century astrolabe under glass, spectral analysis graphs pinned to a board, felt suddenly alien. Every shadow seemed deeper. The hum of the climate control system sounded like a slow, mechanical heartbeat. She scanned the room, her eyes darting past the familiar artifacts. What was she looking for? The note described a temporal blade, a localized intersection point. Where? 15 seconds. A part of her, the rational PhD, screamed that this was a prank, an elaborate, cruel hoax by a rival. But the handwriting, she knew the slight pressure she applied to the cross of a T, the lazy curl of her G, this was hers. The contradiction was a live wire in her brain. Her motivation was simple, primal: see, verify, prove it wrong. She had to witness the empty moment the note predicted, to reclaim her sanity from this paradox. 5 seconds. She stood in the center of the room, fists clenched, staring at the bank of monitoring equipment near the far wall. The air grew thick, heavy with static that lifted the fine hairs on her arms. 3, 2, 1. Nothing happened. A shaky, relieved laugh escaped her lips. Of course, a hoax. She took a step toward the note, ready to crumple it, to dissect the paper and ink in her own lab and find the forger. Then the lights flickered, not a power surge, but a rapid, strobing pulse. A low-frequency thrum vibrated through the floor up into her bones. Directly in front of the equipment bank, a patch of reality about the size of a doorway began to glitch. It was the only word for it. The linoleum floor, the white wall, the sleek monitor screens, they dissolved into a shimmering haze of pixels and light. And through the haze, another scene bled through. She saw twisted metal, scorched concrete veined with thick, phosphorescent green moss. A shattered window frame held jagged teeth of glass, reflecting a sickly orange sky. This was her lab, but ruined, decayed, decades into a terrible future. The smell of damp, rotten ozone washed over her, overwhelming the sterile lab air. Then movement. A figure stood in the center of that ruin, silhouetted against the alien glow. It was a woman, her posture one of utter exhaustion, her clothes tattered. As Elara watched, frozen, the figure turned. The face was older, etched with lines of pain and desperation, the eyes hollow, but it was her face. Future Elara. The echo locked eyes with present Elara. The echo's mouth moved, shaping words with urgent, silent force, a warning Elara could not hear. The vision lasted only 3 heartbeats. Then, with a sound like tearing silk, it snapped away. The lab was normal, solid, quiet. The astrolabe under its glass dome, however, was no longer a corroded relic. For a fleeting second, it gleamed as if freshly cast, its brass rings perfect, its engravings sharp and deep, before reverting to its familiar, aged state. Elara stumbled back, hitting her desk, her heart hammering against her ribs. The note was real. The anomaly was real. She had seen herself. The open loop yawned wide before her. What was the warning her future self tried to scream? Before she could process the horror, a new piece of paper materialized on her desk with a soft, impossible pap. It hadn't been there a second ago. This one was stained with what looked like ash and dried, rusty streaks. The same handwriting, now jagged and rushed, contained only a single, terrifying line. They think it's a year away. They're wrong. The echo year begins tonight. The ash-stained note feels like ice in Elara's hand. The echo year begins tonight. Her future self's warning is not a distant prophecy. It's a countdown already in its final hours. The rational part of her mind, the historian, is screaming for data, for a control group, for peer review. But the woman who just saw a ruined version of her own face has a more urgent priority: survival. She moves on pure instinct, snatching her coat and the 2 impossible notes. The lab is no longer a sanctuary, it's ground zero. She needs to get to the university's main server hub, to the historical weather and seismic databases. If reality is glitching, there might be a pattern, an electromagnetic signature, something she can track, something she can prove. The hallway outside her lab is deserted, lit by the sterile glow of emergency lighting. It's past midnight. The silence is absolute, broken only by the hum of the building and the frantic rhythm of her own breathing. She passes the archaeology department's display case. A Neolithic hand axe rests on a velvet pad. As she walks by, her reflection in the glass wavers. For a split second, it's not her face looking back. It's a younger woman, with wilder eyes and strange markings of ochre on her cheeks, holding a similar axe. Then it's gone. Elara stumbles, catching herself against the wall. The convergences aren't confined to her lab, they're spreading. She breaks into a run. The server room is in the basement, a cold, windowless vault. The keycard reader at the door glows a steady green. She swipes her access card. A red light blinks. Denied, she tries again. Red, a system error message scrolls across the small screen. Temporal authentication mismatch. User credentials anomalous. What? She whispers. The door clicks open anyway, not with the usual hydraulic hiss, but with the sound of old, heavy wood groaning on iron hinges. The sterile server room is gone. Beyond the threshold is a stone corridor lit by flickering torchlight. The air is cold and smells of damp earth and old parchment. She can hear distant, chanting voices in a language that prickles at the edges of her memory, Latin but not quite. This isn't a future ruin, this is a past. Her university, built on layers of history, is bleeding through. She can't go in, but as she steps back, the vision solidifies. A monk in a rough habit rounds the corner, carrying a stack of vellum. He looks directly at her, his eyes widening in terror. He crosses himself, drops the manuscripts and flees, shouting a warning. The corridor begins to flicker, the stone walls transparent against the sleek server racks behind them. Two realities superimposed. A hand closes on her shoulder from behind. Elara whirls, a cry caught in her throat. It's Dr. Aris Thorne, the head of the physics department. He's in his rumpled lab coat, his face pale under the hallway lights. Elara, my God, are you seeing this too? His voice is tight with a fear that mirrors her own. He's not a rival. He's a brilliant, skeptical man who once laughed at her paper on anomalous historical data. His presence here, now believing, is more terrifying than being alone. Before she can answer, the stone corridor vision snaps away. The server room door is just a door again, but the floor between them and it is wrong. A 5-foot-wide circle of the linoleum has been replaced by cracked asphalt, wet with recent rain, reflecting the neon sign of a diner she doesn't recognize. A 1950s-era hubcap lies rusting in the center of it. The air from the patch smells of gasoline and night-blooming jasmine. The convergence points are stabilizing, Aris says, his academic mind already wrestling with the horror. They're lasting longer, and they're not random. Look, he points a shaking finger at the hubcap. Etched into the rust, almost worn away, is a symbol, a circle with a wave passing through it. Elara digs into her pocket and pulls out the first note from her future self. There in the margin next to the countdown is the same symbol, hastily drawn. It's a marker, she breathes. She's marking the points of intersection. Or someone is, Aris corrects, his eyes grave. Elara, if this is happening globally, even locally, the structural integrity of spacetime in this building. A deep, resonant groan echoes through the hallway, as if the very foundations of the university are straining. A crack splinters up the wall beside them, not a crack in plaster, but a jagged line of blinding white light. Through it she hears a cacophony, the roar of a crowd, the clash of steel, a symphony orchestra all at once, the sound of all times bleeding together. Her phone buzzes violently in her pocket. She pulls it out. The screen is glitching, showing a weather app, then a medieval tapestry, then a star chart. A text message appears, clear amidst the chaos. The text on Elara's glitching phone screen is stark against the visual noise of collapsing eras. It's from an unknown number, but the first two words freeze her blood. I'm sorry. The rest is a set of coordinates and a time, 90 minutes from now, followed by a frantic postscript. They're tracking the bleed. You have to move. Don't trust the silence. Who is that? Aris asks, peering over her shoulder. The crack of white light in the wall beside them pulses, the cacophony of merged times swelling and then fading to a whisper. I don't know, Elara says, but the apology feels personal. It feels like her. The future Elara, the Echo, is not just appearing in static visions. She's actively communicating, trying to guide. But guide her to what? The note said the Echo year begins tonight, but this feels like a rendezvous. A new, terrifying question forms. Is her future self an ally, or is she leading Elara into the heart of the catastrophe? They can't stay here. The groaning in the building's bones is getting louder. Aris leads her to a service stairwell, arguing they need to get to his lab 2 floors up. He has prototype sensors designed to detect quantum field fluctuations. If we can map the convergence points, maybe we can predict them, he says, his voice a mix of terror and scientific fervor. The stairwell is a nightmare of unstable reality. One flight is modern concrete, the next is Victorian-era wood, slick with a phantom drizzle. They pass a landing that is suddenly the packed earth of a trench, the smell of mud and cordite choking them before it winks out. Each step is a gamble. The stakes are no longer just about their sanity or even their lives. With every stabilized patch of another time, their own present is being overwritten, piece by piece. What happens if a convergence point stabilizes over a person, a community? The thought is too large to hold. Aris's lab is a contrast of chaos and order, a mirror of Elara's but filled with humming servers and whiteboards dense with equations. The moment they enter, his bank of sensors erupts in a chorus of alarms. Waveforms spike across multiple screens. My God, he breathes, typing frantically. It's not just here. I'm tapping into shared global research grids. There are reports. A patch of rainforest in Brazil that's been replaced by a glacial ice sheet for 3 minutes. A suburb in Tokyo where every electronic device displayed 18th century Japanese poetry for exactly 10 seconds. This is global, Elara, and the frequency is increasing exponentially. The big stakes crash over her. This isn't an academic anomaly. It's an extinction-level event for the present. The entire world is becoming a palimpsest, its current layer being scrubbed away by the past and future. Before she can process this, one of Aris's monitors fizzes and changes. It's not displaying data. It's showing a live, grainy feed from what looks like a security camera. The location is familiar, the university's main power substation. In the center of the concrete yard stands a figure blurred but unmistakable in its posture of weary defiance. The Echo, future Elara. She's looking directly into the camera as if she knows they're watching. She raises a hand, not in warning but in a beckoning gesture. Then she points emphatically downward at the ground beneath her feet. The coordinates from the text message. She's there. It's a trap, Aris says immediately. You can't go. She's me, Elara fires back, a sudden, fierce protectiveness surging through the fear. She's trying to tell me something she couldn't write down. Or she's what you become if you go there, Aris counters. His console beeps, a new data window opens, he goes very still. Elara, the largest energy spike isn't at the substation, it's here, beneath us, in the old sealed-off foundation layers of this building. He pulls up an architectural schematic. There's a chamber, late 19th century, built by the university's founder, Elara Vance. The name hits her like a physical blow. Vance, her great-great-grandfather, a reclusive industrialist and amateur physicist whose personal papers were lost in a fire, a man she spent years trying and failing to research. Your lab, the server room corridor, this lab, all the major convergence points we've witnessed, Aris says, his voice hollow with revelation. They're not random, they're directly above this chamber. It's not the epicenter, it's the source. The world tilts. This isn't a natural disaster. It's an inheritance, a family legacy buried in stone and time, now waking up. The Echo isn't just warning her about a phenomenon, she's warning her about their own bloodline. The monitor feed from the substation glitches violently. For a second, the image clears. The substation feed cuts to static. Elara stares at the architectural schematic glowing on Aris's screen, the name Vance a silent scream in the room. Her great-great-grandfather's hidden chamber is the source. This is her legacy. The Echo wasn't just warning her about a phenomenon. She was leading her to the family tomb of a mistake. We have to go down there, Elara says, her voice stripped of all doubt. Elara, the energy readings are off the scale. It's a temporal pressure cooker. That's why she's at the substation, Elara realizes, the pieces snapping together. She's not beckoning me to her. She's creating a diversion, drawing power or attention away from here. She's giving us a window. They find the access door behind a movable bookshelf in the lab's storage closet, a feature not on any modern blueprint. The stairs beyond are narrow, hewn from the building's original stone, descending into a cold, earthy darkness. The air grows thick with the smell of ozone and old soil. With every step, the hum of Aris's equipment fades, replaced by a new sound, a low, discordant choir of whispers, echoes of conversations from 100 different years bleeding through the walls. The chamber is not large. It is a vault of fitted stone, empty save for a single central apparatus. It looks like a cross between a Victorian orrery and a Tesla coil, a brass and copper monstrosity of spinning rings and crackling glass rods. At its heart, suspended in a web of wires, is a crystalline orb pulsing with a sickly, rhythmic light. This is Elara Vance's life's work, a machine not to see time, but to touch it. And standing before it, her back to them, is the Echo. She turns slowly. In the direct, unstable light of the machine, she looks worse than the brief visions. Her face is gaunt, her eyes holding a fractured knowledge that makes Elara's soul ache. This is not just an older version. This is a version that has lived through the end. You came, the Echo says, her voice a dry rustle. Good, he would have stopped you. She glances at Aris, who stands frozen in the doorway. What is this? Elara demands, gesturing to the machine. What did he do? He called it the Chronos lens, a window to all moments. He was a historian like you. He wanted to see the truth unfiltered. The echo's smile is a bitter thing. He opened the window, but a window works both ways. It doesn't just let you look out, it lets everything else look in. The central mystery, the question that has haunted her from the first note, crystallizes here in the dark. The echo year, it's not a future event, is it? No, the echo whispers. It's the permanent state of the window being stuck open. All moments, past and future, bleeding into the now. The convergence isn't the catastrophe, it's the symptom. The catastrophe was our attempt to stop it. On the word hour, the echo's form shimmers. For a second, Elara sees a memory that isn't hers. This chamber, but filled with people with equipment. Herself older, working frantically at a console alongside Aris. A plan. A desperate surge of power meant to slam the window shut. We tried to overload the lens. To fuse the breach, the echo continues, the memory fading, leaving her looking hollowed out. It worked, for a moment. And in that moment of forced closure, the pressure, it shattered the pain. It didn't seal time, it exploded it. What you saw in your lab, the ruin, the moss, the orange sky, that's the world after our cure. A fractured, dying reality where time is a wound that won't heal. The revelation is a physical blow. Preventing the echo year is what causes it. The paradox is complete. Then what do we do? Elara asks, despair clawing at her throat. The echo steps closer, her desperate eyes locking onto Elara's. You don't prevent it, you have to survive its birth. The window is open, it cannot be closed, but it can be calibrated, stabilized. The merger of timelines is coming, it will be chaos. A storm of all history happening at once, but if the lens is guided, not forced, the storm can pass. A new layered reality can coalesce, one where we remember all our pasts and possible futures. A painful, crowded existence. But an existence. And the cost? Aris asks from the doorway, his voice trembling. The echo looks at him, then back at Elara, infinite sorrow in her gaze. Me, my timeline, the one born from the failed reset. To stabilize the birth, this branch, the branch where you learn from my failure, must become the primary trunk. My memories, my world, they will be overwritten. Unwritten, I will never have existed. You will stand here, a year from now, with no warning to give. The machine's pulse quickens, the discordant choir of whispers swelling to a deafening roar. The air in the chamber shimmers like a heat haze, and for a single, terrifying second, Elara sees everything at once. The stone walls are transparent, layered with the lab above, the Victorian corridor, the future ruin, a Neolithic campfire, a cityscape of impossible spires. All times, all moments exist here now. The echo year is not coming, it is being born. The echo stumbles, her form flickering between solid and spectral. It's starting, the final merger. You have to guide the lens. Use the primary control node. The crystal's frequency must match the harmonic of the present moment. It's the only anchor. Aris is already moving, his physicist's mind seizing the technical parameters. He scrambles to a bank of archaic dials and levers on the machine's base. I can try to modulate the energy output, but the calibration, it's like tuning a radio during an earthquake. Elara moves to the central apparatus, her eyes fixed on the pulsing crystal. Her hands hover over the brass rings. This is the choice. To follow the echo's path, to try and stabilize this chaotic birth, to live in a crowded, layered reality forever, to become her. But as her fingers brush the cold metal, a final, devastating loop closes. She understands the true nature of the echo year. It is a new state of reality, but it is one born from a paradox so profound it can never be stable. A reality where cause and effect are meaningless, where every choice and its opposite exist simultaneously. It is not a world to be survived. It is a slow, eternal unraveling of everything that makes a moment real. The echo's timeline, the ruined world, is the proof. Their attempted cure failed because the disease is the paradox itself. Letting the merger happen, even guided, doesn't solve it. It just accepts the cancer. There is another option, one her future self, fractured by her own failure, could never see. Elara Vance's notes, the lost papers from the fire. She'd spent years looking for them, but she'd been looking in the past. The answer was in the future. In the echo's own, desperate memory, shown to her moments ago. The console from the failed reset attempt. She sees it clearly now in her mind's eye. Not the machine to close the window, but a different protocol. A secondary system. A total timeline reset. Not a fusion, but a deletion of the entire aberrant branch, starting from the moment the window was forced open. It would require all the lens's energy, channeled inward. A suicide pill for a timeline. Aris, she says, her voice eerily calm. The secondary panel, on the western pillar. Overload the induction coils. Route all power to the crystalline core. Not to modulate, to invert. He stares at her. Invert. Elara, that would create a recursive energy loop. It would collapse the... It will collapse the anomaly at its source, she finishes. It will reset the branch to before it fractured. The echo hears. She flickers violently. a scream of pure anguish tearing from her that is both sound and silent thought. No, you can't. This is our only chance. My only chance to exist. You don't exist, Elara says, the words the hardest she has ever spoken, tears cutting tracks through the dust on her cheeks. You are the ghost of a mistake, a warning carved from a future that should never be. Letting you persist, letting this become real, it's the true catastrophe. Survival isn't worth this. She turns to the controls. The echo lunges, a spectral hand passing through Elara's arm with a shock of icy despair. Please, I'm you. I know, Elara whispers, and I'm sorry. She throws the final lever. Aris, trusting her with a sob, slams his hands down on the overload sequence. The world goes white, not with light but with absence. The machine's hum rises to a piercing shriek, then cuts off. The layered visions vanish, the whispers cease. The pulsing crystal darkens, then cracks with a sound like a breaking heart. Elara turns. The echo is still there, but she is fading, becoming transparent, a photograph left in the sun. The desperation in her eyes melts away, replaced by a profound, weary understanding. A peace. She looks at Elara, her own face, and gives the faintest, saddest smile. A thank you, a goodbye. Then she is gone, unwritten. Silence, the deep, total silence of a stone chamber buried for a century. The machine is dead metal. The air is still and cold, smelling only of dust. Aris slumps against the wall, breathing hard. Did it work? Elara looks at her hands. They are solid, real. The crushing pressure of merged time is gone. I think so. They climb the stairs in a daze. The service stairwell is just a stairwell. The hallway is intact, no cracks of white light. The silence in the stone chamber is absolute. Elara stares at the space where the echo vanished, the ghost of her own future erased by her choice. The machine is dark, the air is still. It worked. The reset protocol did its job, collapsing the aberrant timeline before it could fully infect the present. She and Aris climb the stairs in a heavy, shell-shocked quiet. The hallway is normal. The cracks of white light are gone. The university feels solid, real, anchored in a single, stable now. Back in Aris's lab, the sensor arrays are quiet. The global anomaly reports on his screens have stopped updating. The exponential curve has flatlined. He runs a dozen diagnostics, his hands trembling. The convergence energy, it's gone, not just receding, it's like it never was. The background chronal radiation is back to baseline. He looks at her, his eyes wide with awe and horror. You did it. You erased the echo year. Elara doesn't feel triumphant. She feels hollow. She sacrificed a version of herself, a consciousness that pleaded for existence on the logic of a paradox. She sits heavily in a chair, the weight of the decision pressing down. The central mystery is answered. The echo year was a catastrophic new state of reality, born from the failed attempt to prevent a lesser anomaly. It was a paradox made flesh, and the only way to survive it was to ensure it was never born at all. Aris brings her a glass of water. It's over, he says gently. She nods, but the historian in her, the part that trusts evidence, is already stirring. Something is wrong. It's too clean. A paradox that profound doesn't just leave without a trace. She thinks of the first note, the paper that smelled of ozone and old copper, the symbol on the hubcap, the specific coordinates. The reset deleted the future branch, but what about the past? The original trigger, Elara Vance's first activation of the Chronos lens that still happened. That was the seed. The chamber, she says suddenly. We need to seal it, permanently. They return with concrete and tools from the maintenance closet. But when they move the bookshelf and open the access door, the stairs are different. The hewn stone is now rough, crude concrete. The earthy smell is gone, replaced by the scent of new mortar. At the bottom, the vaulted chamber is no longer a vault. It's a small, square-root cellar. The magnificent, terrible machine is not there. In its place are dusty shelves holding preserved jars and old, rusting gardening tools. There is no central apparatus, no crystal, no legacy. Aris shines his light around, stunned. It's just a cellar, the machine. It's gone, Elara whispers. The reset didn't just erase the future, it rewrote the past. It corrected the original anomaly. Elara Vance never built the Chronos lens, he built a root cellar. Her family's secret was not a temporal weapon, but a place for pickles. The logical twist settles over her, chilling and perfect. The solution wasn't to fight the paradox, but to use a greater paradox to erase its cause. A bootstrap loop that ended by deleting its own beginning. This is the true resolution. A world where the threat never existed. No notes from the future. No ruined labs. No desperate echo. She has saved everything by making it so there was never anything to save. They seal the door anyway. They work in silence, covering the evidence of a mystery that in this new timeline never was. As they pack up to leave, Elara's coat slips off the back of her chair. She bends to pick it up and freezes. There on the floor under the chair is a single sheet of paper. Her breath catches, it's crisp, modern, a page from her own lab notebook. She picks it up with trembling fingers. It's a diagram drawn in her own precise, looping handwriting, a diagram of a crystalline orb surrounded by brass rings. At the top, she has written a title, Theoretical Temporal Resonance Chamber, based on fragmentary Vance family law. Below the diagram in the margin is a note she doesn't remember writing. It says, Hypothesis, a recursive stability loop could be achieved through phased inversion, but what is the trigger? The paper smells faintly of ozone and something metallic, like a storm on old copper. The glass of water Aris gave her sits on the desk beside her. She looks at it. The surface is perfectly still. Then, a single, concentric ripple forms in the center, expanding outward as if from a tiny impact. Nothing touched it. Aris doesn't notice. He's looking at his screens, at the peaceful, flat lines. We should get some rest. It's been a long night. Elara folds the paper and slips it into her pocket. She looks at her hands, solid and real in this stable, saved world. She thinks of the echo's final, understanding smile, a thank you for a mercy that also meant oblivion. She has her answer. The echo year was a catastrophe and she prevented it. She survived.